Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Metallic Armor quote-unquote set. This isn't a set that comes together, but this is all 5 of them that have released. For whatever reason, as of this recording, they have not released white yet. I'll probably talk about that a few times during the review. Probably stupid of me, but I'm recording this right before Fan First Friday, so it's possible that that gets announced tomorrow just because I'm talking about it. But just know that Dawson in this timeline does not have a White Ranger that exists. What's important is that these were put up for pre-order and came out before White Ranger was ever even announced. So I just wanted to note that. That's why he's not there. Also, Pink came out quite a while ago by itself. It was only these 4 that came out, but I'm including her in the review for just an overall more comprehensive look and comparison. The only thing I won't be covering with her is her accessories because they're in my giant Lightning Collection bag, and I am too lazy to dig all of them out, so I'm sorry. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started just by going over the accessories so I don't forget anything. Then we'll take a look at everybody individually, and then I will be comparing them all to the main previous releases. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go over yellows first because they're right here next to me. So as per usual, you have civilian heads, and these are based off of Season 3 time, so Aisha has longer hair. I actually think this is one of the stronger head sculpts, and probably my favorite Aisha head sculpt we've gotten so far, because the only other one I can think of is the one from the Scorpina set, where she's got like the really obvious 90s hairstyle, so this one just a little bit more quote-unquote normal looking. 2 different sets of hands right here. You just have some posed hands, and then the ones on her, which are kind of grappling hands for grappling, like, you know, the weapons, or just kind of looking like she's doing a tiger claw pose. Then you have a shiny version of the daggers right here, which look totally fine for what they are. And something that's neat about all of these guys, which did indeed start with Kim, is they all have Zeo crystals. Tanya, spoiler alert, it does come with the yellow one here, although some of them have some interesting different picks, which we'll get to in a second. And here we have Billy's, which is more of a Season 3 / Zeo sculpt without the glasses. Honestly, the glasses one, like, obviously it's not bad, like the way he looked in the first season, but the way they did it looked kind of creepy and cartoonish, so I much prefer this one. Plus, we can do this now. Cut to cutaway that hopefully me films in the future. This right here, being able to do Gold Ranger Billy. I personally always wanted to see him become Gold Ranger in the show. I think Billy really stepped up to the plate during Season 3 and Zeo, and it would have been cool to see him become the Gold Ranger, and a little bit more of an unconventional choice compared to bringing Jason back. Not that Jason wasn't cool as the Gold Ranger, but I always wish this would have happened. Maybe in one of the comic universes, but unfortunately the glasses, cartoony looking Billy didn't fit so much for this, but this actually looks really nice and right, and I really like that I can do this. Oh, now I'm just noticing this weird little bucktooth thing he has going on, which just looks strange. Like, you give me a victory and then you take it away like that? Come on, son. He also comes with 2 versions of the lance. Oh, 2 different kinds of the lance. You have the complete together one and then the individual one. Also 2 different sets of hands, these traditional closed fists and then the ones on them which are open. I almost forgot to mention this is Aisha's effect part. And this is Billy's. And also, he comes with a Zeo crystal. He comes with the blue one. To be accurate, he should have come with no one. Now we have Adam's head sculpt, which honestly looks pretty similar to the last one we got to me. I think it looks decently accurate. It's kind of that traditional lightning head sculpt where it looks kind of accurate but also lifeless. Here are his 2 alternate hands, which are just kind of more grasping hands. Honestly, not too dissimilar from the ones that are already on him. And then his effect part, which looks like he's just shooting a holographic pumpkin. You have the Power Axe! That was a terrible Adam impersonation. I was trying to do it from Once a Ranger, and I failed this city. Then he has his proper Zeo crystal, which is the green one. I mean, obviously it's not the color green, but you can tell by the shape and you know what it is from the show. Looking good, Rocky. Is he, though? Honestly, to me, this doesn't look like Rocky that much. It looks like royalty-free Rocky. His alternate hands, which are just closed fists. His literal lightning effect, way to be on the nose. The power sword right there. And then he actually comes with the red Zeo crystal, which is Tommy's. Honestly, this isn't a huge deal. I'm sure there's some fans out there that be like, oh my god, it's inaccurate, why did they do that? I'm gonna assume they just did it so that you could have all 5 Zeo crystals if you bought these 5. If they wanted to be accurate, he should have had blue, he should have had none, and then pink, yellow, green, and then Tommy would have had red with him. Trying to figure out why they haven't released Tommy yet, and why they were waiting, and I'm still not sure about that as of this recording, but I'm going to make a guess that possibly he will come with the completed Zeo crystal. If that were the case, if it were me, I actually would have given them their accurate colors and then given Billy the complete Zeo crystal, because I feel like Tommy will sell no matter what. Not that Billy won't sell, but he won't sell as many as Tommy, and that might give you incentive to buy it. But I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. I think the Zeo crystals are a nice little addition. There's something I'm not really going to pose it with probably, but I think it's just kind of a nice little bonus that make these unique and really represent that they come from Season 3, which I think is cool. But now let's go ahead and take a look at these guys individually. So I'm starting with red, and I'm overall going to be starting with red and black because the special thing about these is not only are they metallic, but they feature a revised head sculpt. They aren't merely just repaints, and these aren't merely just repaints for the sake of repaints anyway, because if you remember, these actually come from the show during Season 3. But they have a head sculpt that is much more accurate to the show. I don't know why MMPR Red's helmet is so hard to get, but so many companies have had a hard time getting it right over the years, and it just kind of sucked that from one of the very early releases out of this collector's line, we had such a weird MMPR Red helmet, but they fixed it here, thankfully. I think it looks great. I really just love it. I think it's one of the actual best MMPR Red helmets we've gotten. It just has the most accurate proportions to me. You have the silver paint there, which I think is supposed to be white. It's actually supposed to be silver on this one because it is metallic, so that doesn't matter so much, but the important part is the proportions are actually finally accurate, and I'm gonna guess that sometime in the nearest future we will get a new MMPR release for Red with the proper helmet, which I won't be mad by. I'm not excited about it, but I'm looking forward to it in the sense that I just want to have a proper one for the collection. Other than that, it's pretty par for the course stuff. I think for the most part, my opinion on the metallic paint is the same for all these. I think it looks really good, and it's more accurate than the Legacy one, and overall accurate enough. The fact that it has a little bit of a translucent feel makes it feel slightly off from what it's like in the show to me, but that's honestly not a deal breaker. It's not something that I would want them to fix because it's like 98% close enough. And I think one nice detail is you actually have the kind of silver look for the diamond, which is what it looks like in the show. So overall, I think it represents it decently enough for this, which is just something that I wanted just enough. Also, I almost forgot to mention, they all include this version of the Blade Blaster, which I just have all in their holsters. Articulation-wise, I'm just going to use him as the base model for the articulation because the articulation is the same on all of them. So you have the nice ball and hinge joint around here, all around range of motion, swiveling right here. You have a double elbow joint right here, swiveling at the fist. Nice ball joint at the leg, swiveling at the leg. Nice double knee joint. You have a hinge joint here at the foot. You have a hinge joint here at the waist and then a ball joint at the chest for a solid range of motion, and a nice ball joint at the head so you can do some creepy exorcist stuff. And that is the same across all the molds, the only difference being the girls are obviously the skinnier mold, and then pink has a skirt, which only hinders things ever so slightly, and thankfully out of all 5 of these I don't have any loose joint problems, so overall solid. So I think Red looks very good overall. I'm pleased with it for what it is, but now let's go ahead and compare him to his past main release. These are the primary releases, and these are really the main ones you're going to want to pay attention to. This is the original release and the metallic. Obvious difference there is the metallic, but you can see how different the helmets are and how much more accurate this is to the show. This one is just so strange, again, especially for one of the earliest releases. I mean, I guess that sounds funny because sometimes they get inaccurate with early releases, but then you have ones like White, which was one of the very first ones to ever release even before Red, and he was very accurate. And these are just here just to show all of them, but these are nearly identical, but you can see the huge difference there. And then this is the Legacy release, which also has a very strange stylized look to the helmet, so that's very different as well, and that's much better here. And I will say I didn't hate these, but in terms of representing the metallic armor from the show, this is so much better. Like, this does come off more like a, hey look, let's just do a metallic release, but this one comes off like they actually gave thought into how it looked in the show, and I think that's really great. There is 2 other versions to talk about, which is of course the figure art here, which has its positives and minuses. I mean, this one's going to have a lot more like detailed accessories and whatnot, and the helmet does look good and is well painted, but I think it's just way too disproportionately skinny. Like, even the helmet seems too skinny and the body's too skinny. However, as of this recording, we just found out we are going to be getting new versions of the figure arts, so I get a feeling that the Jew Ranger ones might be some of the earliest ones they redo, given that they can capitalize on the popularity of MMPR, so stay tuned for that. But I'm going to say I think this is a much more overall accurate sculpt, despite the fact that people like to romanticize figure arts. Then this is a Hasbro basic figure version, which came with, this looks like the same head sculpt, to be honest, but this came with the Dino Team Up triple pack, and this came out like not too long after this came out, and it was honestly crazy that the basic figure that are like $8 by themselves had a much more accurate head sculpt than this one, and honestly this might even be the same head sculpt, but that's very comparable. But I'm looking forward to getting Lightning Collection version that actually has this one going. Alright, now we have MMPR Black here, who is, I think, the second most improved. I think Red was the most glaring helmet that needed improvement. With Black, it was honestly okay, but I didn't really think about it until I had the figure for a while, that it really did feel off, and I wish it was a little bit better. And thankfully, yet again, they have fixed it here, and it's a much more accurate, and I would say probably the most accurate Black Ranger helmet we've gotten overall in terms of fitting it to the body proportionately, as well as the proportions of the helmet itself. Because again, that's one they kind of had a hard time getting right, in terms of matching it back and forth. There's been varying degrees, some that are better than others, but it looks a little bit more accurate overall, especially to the MMPR suit, where it's a little bit bulkier, meaning like it's the US footage. So I really appreciate that, especially since Black is my personal favorite suit, and I was disappointed to have an off helmet for that, and so it's really nice to actually have a fixed version of that. And we'll compare it here to the Legacy one in a minute, but his metallic version is much more noticeably metallic, which is really nice, and I think it looks really nice overall. And oddly enough, because it's not a regular kind of see-through color, it stands out a little bit more. But speaking of comparing to others, though, let's go ahead. Now we can have MMPR Black. And as you can see, the differences between these two helmets aren't as noticeable compared to Reds, but there is a distinct difference where you can see this is a much more accurate and well-rounded version of the helmet like it looks in the show. This one is also just a little bit squished. This one was just ever so slightly off compared to Reds, but it's a much welcome improvement, and since it's my favorite suit, I actually am looking forward to getting an improved one on that, depending on how they release it. There were some slight differences between these two with the helmets. Mainly the silver paint on the tusks was a little bit like brighter, but that's not a huge deal. And then here's the metallic version for Legacy, which you can barely tell it's metallic. I actually used this as a stand-in for the regular one because it had the right white belt, and you can only tell it's got metallic paint if you look really close to it. So you can see there it is the superior version with that. They don't have a basic figure release, but here is the figure art. Again, my same complaints about the red one. It's just too skinny, and the molds overall don't hold up, even if they do have good details. Alright, now we have Billy here, who, I'm going to be honest, I'm waiting until I actually get them on camera so I can have a live reaction like seeing it for the first time. But I don't think the helmet was revised as much for this one. I think this one does look overall accurate, though. I didn't have that many problems with the original MMPR Blue release, so it wasn't like Black or Red where I feel like it needed an update, but we'll see here when we get that in a minute how much of a difference it is. This one is good too. The helmet looks accurate proportionately to me, not any huge glaring detail problems. The overall metallic paint looks good. I'm happy with it. I guess I'm going to be eating my words with this one, because like I said, I was waiting to put them on camera to actually have them next to each other in front of me, and I'll be damned, this is a much improved head sculpt. This one is far fatter than I remember. Like, I remembered this in my head, this one in my head looking like this one. So this one is also a much improved head sculpt, so that is definitely a really nice improvement. I'm looking forward to getting that one. This one honestly looks way worse than I remember, so yeah, that's definitely improved. Now I feel like Dawson from 5 minutes ago is an idiot. I mean, Dawson from now is an idiot, but that guy's even more of an idiot. And then obviously the comparisons there for the metallic for the Legacy Collection, and you know, same differences as per usual. And then here we have the figure art, which again, far too skinny, but it's a lot better than this weirdo over here. I didn't even realize how weird you were. Alright, here we have Yellow, who I feel her color changes the most because she takes on a darker tinge, which I actually think represents it most accurately from the show, and I feel like her helmet sculpt is actually pretty much mostly the same also, and this was another one I didn't really have any huge problems with. Like, again, compared to Black and Red, where it noticeably was different, any minor differences between how it actually looks in the show felt rather, well, minor to me. And overall, I find her to be a solid figure, and I'm really happy with the way the metallic dark feel of this turned out, because that, again, that is the way it looks in the show, and I really think that's well represented here. Okay, here we have Yellow, and you may be wondering why there's two MMPR Yellows, because in case you didn't know, there was an individual release, and then there recently was a release of an MMPR Yellow with Scorpina, and honestly, for me, the only difference is it's a slightly different shade of yellow. This one's a little bit lighter, this one's a little bit darker, but I feel the helmets are near identical. I feel the same way about this one. I feel like I'm having a hard time telling with the angles because of the different color, but these are all very close. This one might look a little bit skinnier, but compared to Blue, Black, and Red, where I notice a huge difference, these are pretty much near the same, so there's not a huge deal of difference there worth updating. And then this one actually looks very weird. I forgot how weird the Legacy ones looked. Not talking about even the body, but the helmet looks very, like, droopy. Like, it looks like a sad face, droopy, melting helmet. It looks really strange. Almost kind of cool in a stylized way, but for accuracy, not so much. And then here's the figure art version, again, too dang skinny. However, it's worth noting this is the female MMPR Yellow release, and because Yellow was a male in Japan, they actually do have a male G-Ranger release, so you can pick that up, and that's going to be, you know, basically the same things, a little bit too skinny, but good details. Alright, now we have Pink, which I have already gone over in a review, so I'll be brief. And she's missing her blaster. Way to not fit in with the rest of them. But I will say I was a little bit harder on this one as far as a metallic release when I reviewed it individually as compared to having them all together. Mainly because, like I said, I wasn't a fan of the slightly see-through aesthetic because that wasn't exactly accurate. And I think with hers, you can see it more, like you can see through the arms. And it makes it feel more like the gimmicky translucent figure release than something that's actually representing a mode in the show. And I'll say that hers does the quote-unquote worst job at it. But once you have them all together, it looks fine. I think the others are stronger. I think it's just because of the way her color looks on there that it makes it seem more see-through. So it's in some ways the weakest for me in terms of the metallic color. But as a figure, just like all of the 500 MMPR Pink figures we have, I think it's fine, and I have really no problems with proportion, and I think it looks good. But let's compare her to her previous releases as well. Alright, now we have Pink, who I have already covered, and honestly for me, the molds and the helmets are very close. This is kind of like yellow, where I feel like the color's giving me a hard time looking at it, but I think that that's maybe a little bit skinnier on this one, just ever so slightly, but it's nothing too noticeable for me. Again, compared to black, blue, and red, where it's hugely noticeable, it's very much the same. And there is even more Pink Ranger releases on the horizon. This is definitely a superior release metallic-wise in terms of just general look and how it looks accurately, because this is much more of a hot pink. This one actually is second to black in terms of the one that doesn't even look like a metallic release, to be honest. Here's the figure art release, which I would actually say is the best of the bunch in terms of being accurate. I think that Pink's helmet is a little bit more rounded than this in the show, but I think compared to all 5 of them, I think her proportions hold up the best. But what is the final verdict for these figures? I'm going to be honest, I overall like them. I wouldn't say they're absolute must-haves unless you're a huge mmpr fan compared to lots of other different releases, since there is so much mmpr. But for what they are, I really like them. I really do love the updated head sculpts for these 3. I think it's unfortunate on a line level that we'll probably have to purchase a second version of the figures down the line of the regular ones just to get the right head sculpt. But as far as the improvements, just looking at these figures, I really like the head sculpts. The metallic isn't perfect, but it's very close to the show, and I think it's a good representation of it. And I think the fact that it was in the show stops these from being something that's just a repaint just to sell more MMPR, as it was actually a real mode, and it's almost kind of a niche release that I like owning. And I think for what they are, they're good-looking, sturdy figures to represent the metallic armor, and I also really appreciate little stuff like the Zeo crystals. Even though there's some weirdness with who they come with, it doesn't really matter. I think that's just kind of a nice, really neat niche release that represents that these come from Season 3 during the time of that arc, and I appreciate little details like that. So I can say, if you are into the metallic armor and you really want them, I think you'll be happy, even though I think they're not absolute must-haves because they're basically just more MMPR regular figures, but great improved head sculpts. That's about it for this one though, guys. Until next time, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for more videos like this and more. Dawson Ryder, signing out.